and I write about this in my book. Me having a child at 15, it saved my life because I grew up in a very impoverished neighborhood. I grew up around the wrong people. I had one friend that I saw kill another one of my friends with a bat. Another friend double homicide. That's the kind of neighborhood I grew up. My best friend and cousin got killed. I grew up in that environment. And so I went from literally like a crew of 10, like it was two people left, me and one other person. And so when I got to that space in my life, I feel like God said, I'm going to help you out. The
I'm gonna
only
force you
way
to.
I know how to slow you down is this. And it slowed me down because I wanted to be a good father. But here's the juxtaposition. Me and his mother didn't work out. And it wasn't always a great situation, like the communication between us two. And so it literally put me in a state where it slowed me down because now I got to figure out how I navigate seeing my son, being with my son, because it's not easy.
Yeah.
So what my son did for me was slow my life down because otherwise I it could have been very possible I'd have ended up like one of my
Like one of
friends.
your friends,
So
definitely.
that's really what happened with my son. My son really slowed my life down.
And I say that because I see, I'm not, no disrespect, a lot of that happens with promiscuous, poor decision making women. They go out there in these streets, they do all these crazy things, they end up pregnant and become super mom, holy woman, focus, and you watch their whole lives change,
Yeah.
right? I mean, even my life, like I wasn't going too crazy, but my life
You
changed
were
once
going
I had,
crazy.
but I was within reason.
You were going crazy.
For your
But
for your perspective.
from
Five
my
kids in
perspective,
1 month, you going crazy.
but I was a bachelor,
Yeah.
but like, but when you have a kid, I feel like, but again, I was always disciplined, right? No
Me
matter
too.
what it
Me
was.
too.
But when I had my child, my daughter, my discipline went from what I thought was a 10 to a real 10, So that's why I asked that because I see oftentimes that, and mind you, this is not everybody because some people have kids and become worse,
Yeah.
but I do see oftentimes that someone will have a child where they were either going down the wrong path or they were just biting the bait all the time. And that allowed them to really close their mouths and literally focus on what they have to do because the bigger picture is that there is, a baby that literally is depending on you to eat.
Yeah.
And like, I always say this, and this is just my perspective, a man can never be a full man until he has a child to provide for. That's just my
Well, it's gotta be something bigger than you.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like you gotta have a duty to something outside of yourself. And until you get that sense of duty to something outside of yourself, it is gonna be very difficult to be a whole and complete man.
I think, but like when you really think about it, it's like there's not like I said I cared a lot about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Nothing like my child. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing in this
It's the
world.
same thing. I mean, my wife got pregnant when we were 17. We had a baby at 18. It changed my focus.
Yeah.
It really got me focused, and I think that it helped me skip, which is the next question that I have for you. So men usually criticize women, not all men, but there's a lot of men that criticize women whole phase. At when you turn 30, you're not gonna find nobody. And it's sort of this narrative on YouTube, it's a narrative on social media.
Yeah.
Well, going off of what you're saying, it's like, well, won't you guys take the focus off the women for a second? You're dating, you have no resources, you don't have anything, you're 21 years old, you're spending most of your time going to a club buying bottles that you really can't afford.
Right.
You're doing all of this stuff. You're doing the most at the end of the day. And you're playboying around and you're 21, 25, 26, 27, and you're kind of like wasting your best years. So isn't that your training period as a young man, 20, 18, 19, you're gonna need 10 years to get a skill.
Yeah.
So if you start at 21, you'll have it by 31. If you start at 19, you'll have it by 29. But if you start at 30, not that it's impossible, but I think that we exhaust ourselves. Like it's just more difficult when you get older.
Yeah. One of the big issues is that youthful vigor is what can fuel your discipline. Like you combine those two together, like that's when all the possibilities happen. And so I think what happens with a lot of men is by the time they get into their 30s and they don't see themselves as this is what a 30-year-old should have. For all the men who did make the sacrifices,
Mhm.
that's who they have to be compared to because that's who the woman is going to want.
Yeah,
That's who 80% of women are going after.
correct.
The man who did make the sacrifices in his 20s. You see what I'm saying? It's just and it's no different like in high school. Like when I grew up in high school, like you always saw like the girls going dating the guy who had a car.
Yeah.
Sometimes he was like 19 or 20 years
So
old. That's the juxtaposition. It's like women get to see their best years during those times.
correct.
We have to work
Yeah.
and earn and grind during those times.
And I think that's where a lot of men are making mistakes. And I think it's easy for men to make this mistake. When people are saying that men get better at 30, 35 years old, and men are more in demand, they're talking about the men who put the work in their 20s.
Yes.
Yeah.
Men think just I'm 35. I'm more in the no, we're not talking about you. We're talking about the guys who put work in their
Yeah.
20s. They sacrificed most of their 20s.
Yeah.
They didn't do a lot of stuff in their 20s. Now they're 35. Now they're 30. They have the funds, the resources.
We have men and women. I'm just gonna put them into the generation topic now because I don't even think it's a gender thing. When growing up, the age group that I'm in, we watched millions upon millions, more likely than not, people live their life backwards. They would work from 20 to 45, 50, and try to live their lives at 50.
Yeah.
And then we understood that they never were able to live their lives and they were miserable majority of their lives. So now everybody and nowadays is trying to live their lives forward.
Yeah.
That's why you got women that say, okay, don't settle down, go have fun for your 20s. That's why you got the men that's like, yo, you know what, I'll get to that. And they're more procrastinating.
Yeah.
Now, there is foundational proof. There are proven concepts that if you do, you know, live life according to the previous generations, there are provided results. But now we're having, for the first time in life, more provided results of 20, 21, 24, 27-year-old millionaires than ever before,
Yeah.
right? So I think that we're just at a point in life where there's no balance because we've proven your method wrong, but you've also proven it right. And you're proving our method wrong, but we also have some people proving it right. So now you got people caught in between the two.
Yeah.
And I'm not disagreeing. I just think that the old ways took too long.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the thing about it is this, like, I'm just gonna say that number is just highlighted more today. It's the
Yeah.
same number it was 30 years ago. The same amount of millionaires back then that were 21, 22 years old is still less than 1%. Like it's statistic, it's less
Yeah,
than
but
1%.
are there more people?
No, same
Because of that one
e-
percent can
even
be
with
a different one
even
percent.
even with one even if, let's say 40 years ago there was 209 and 250. I don't know how let's say it was
Yeah.
275 million people in the US, right? And let's say today it's 350. Just hypothetically. That's 100 million people more. It's an additional 1%. But that actual 1% number never moved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's still
more people,
1%.
but it's still 1%.
Yeah.
So what happens is that
Because that 1% is still going to be
It's
equally
still the odds are
distributed
still the
yeah, it's
same.
the odds are the same.
within the total
And
population.
there's still 99% of people that's not gonna see that. So,
Yeah.
as I get older, I realize a couple of things. One is that when you're 25 years old, there's a lot of things you could get away with. That when you're in your 40s, it's like, bro, what you been doing this whole time?
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of things that you cannot get away with when you get in your 40s. And the thing about it is like, my dad always used to say this to me, and he still does. He doesn't say it as much anymore, but he used to say, "You'll meet me there." Because he was in his 60s back then. He's in his 70s now, or even when he was in his 50s. I'm like, Pops, you don't understand, man. This new generation, you don't get it. He said, "You're gonna meet me here.
Yeah.
Because I'm already here. You gotta come here." And what happens is that when you waste most of your youthful years as a man, you need that time back so you could get right. You need those 10 years. You need them.
But you gotta blame Yah because kids are coddled at 21. We back then, y'all had to get out the house and figure it out.
Yeah.
Now it's all right. Let me stay in with my
It's
parents till I'm 30 years old. And then you allow your child to live with you till they're 30 years old and then tell them at 30 years old you should be good. No, they still have not lived real life.
yeah.
It's the same thing I say to everybody, right? I was kicked out of college, right? I was kicked out of college when I was 20. Everybody graduated around 21, 22. And when they came out of college, they were still my friends. They're like, yo, I'm graduated. I'm like, that's good for you. Guess what? I've been living the real world for the last 2 years. It's not the same. And I watched them have to figure it out at 24 and 25. By 24 or 25, I was already set. Like my feet were good. I'd had my own place. They're still living with their parents and so on and so forth. So what I'm saying is when we are not we, because I wasn't that person, but you know, nowadays, especially in America, men specifically get the ability to live with their parents till they're damn near supposed to be already having their family. Like the age of like I would say a good age for a man to have a family is around 28 to 32 years old. But if you're living with your parents at 29 and 30, you still don't even know what it's like to live on your own.
I know people gonna kill me about it, but I'm willing to take it.
Okay.
I just think we're soft. Like the world is soft now. The way we raise our children is soft. I don't think we prepare our children, and as a result, they're softer. And this is why we see rates of suicide have gone up. This is why we see more kids depressed. This is why we see so many men out there who are lost. It's because we're not taking them through the proper ceremonies and rituals that we went through growing up.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that everything we went through growing up, we need to take our children through. Like I actually would never whoop my children. Now,
Okay.
I got beaten.
Right on
I
that
actually
one.
wouldn't do that. But there's a lot of things that I went through that I didn't understand as a child that I realized it was my ceremony and my ritual process.
Okay.
And I think what happens is, especially for a lot of men, they don't go through the rituals. And if you think about our ancestors, they're like when a boy turned a certain age, it was
13.
like, all right, we taking you out to
And
the
you got to go
forest
out
and you
and
gotta live by yourself for 3 months.
yeah, on your
And
own.
then you can come back to the village. And some boys didn't make it back.
I've seen a clip of somebody says, "What good is having a Harvard education that you cry once your boss yells at you?
Yeah,
Your boss yelled at you one time, you have to close the door, cry, and you gotta get on the phone with your
yeah,
therapist
yeah,
because your boss screamed at you."
yeah. And that's what I'm talking about. When I say toughness, I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about emotional toughness, like emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Like I think that's what we're lacking is we have no emotional intelligence. We have no accountability. We don't teach accountability to each other. And this is not only for kids. Now we're seeing it with the adults too. Nobody's taking accountability anymore. And
It
so I think that's the foundation of it all is teaching accountability, emotional intelligence, and the importance of discipline.
But you know, the only way you learn those, I don't want to say the only, but in my opinion, the best way to learn these things is through adversity. And we try to take adversity away from everybody we love.
Yeah.
That's just what I've seen.
Yeah,
is resiliency a part of emotional intelligence?
absolutely. And the reason why it is because to be emotionally intelligent, it means that you have to be able to navigate your emotions.
Okay.
And like I was telling you guys, a chapter in my book, I call it fall down fall down 8 times to get up nine.
Okay.
Because it's like in life, you have to be prepared to get up
You,
because you're going to fall.
yeah.
And people have this notion that when you fall, you fail.
Especially in our community.
Well,
But when you fall, it doesn't mean you failed. It means you just hit the ground. And the longer you stay down there, that's what equals failing. And so, what I'm always telling people is that if you want to understand how life works, life is always teaching you, it is always educating you. And it's just if you're willing to be a willing student. And so, if you look at life from the standpoint of life is happening to me, then you're going to always be a victim. But if you look at it from a standpoint of life is happening for me, now you understand when I fell,
It's trying to prepare you.
it's like, all right, why did I fall? Oh, I tripped over that thing right there. I wasn't supposed to even go that way. All right, I got to go the other way. Okay, I fell again. Why did I fall this time? Oh, I ain't tied my shoes up. Like, there's always a
How do we
reason.
get there? Because I feel like sometimes that even if you have the courage,
Yeah,
you have the persistency, you have the goal how to keep going, but sometimes when the exhaustion happens to you, like falling 8 times and getting up on your ninth is really the truth. It is the way,
yeah,
right? Um, but the first time you're strong, the second time you're strong, the third time you're stronger, the fourth time you're strong, the fifth time your spirit, you're willing to go, you're willing to keep moving, but you're exhausted
yeah,
because life sometimes just it life like to pick on the strong.
yeah.
I really believe that. Life like to square up with the
That's a
strong.
victim mentality, though. I'm gonna challenge you there
Okay.
because life ain't picking on you. You are not receiving the lesson.
Exactly.
That's why he's giving it to you again. So you're not a good student. It's just like Rocky, right? In the movie. It's like you can't just like stay down. Nope. I'm getting up. I'm gonna be so resilient that you quit. Like there's one of the Rocky movies where he's fighting a fighter. He wins the fight simply by getting up. They both knocked each other down.
Yeah, I think I remember
He
that.
That's a
gets
very
up, the other guy doesn't. That's the only reason why he wanted to fight. You look at him at the end of the fight, he
He
looked
looked
like he lost
crazy.
the fight,
Yeah. I
but
remember.
he got up. But that comes from understanding that this game isn't about, who could throw a punch.
Could take a punch.
I could take a punch because like I want a lesson. I want a lesson. Hit me. Throw that right hook so I know where to duck.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Like when you come with the uppercut, I know exactly what to do. That's what life is just trying to teach you. And if you can't get that, if you got a bad, if you got a bad vision, a peripheral vision, and you can't see that right hook, you get knocked out,
Well,
and
if
it's
we
gonna always come.
if we change it, right, change the concept of getting knocked down.
Yeah,
First and foremost, nobody gets knocked down 7 times off the rip. You got knocked down twice, had to get back up three.
yeah,
Then you got knocked down 3 times and had to get back up four, so on and so forth. So it's never that it's exhausting. If anything, it's just building endurance. And if you use the Rocky analogy in that movie, when he gets getting punched and he's getting punched, he actually stopped fighting back. And they were like, Rocky, what are you doing? He said, I know what I'm doing.
mm-hmm.
And what he was doing was he let the person throw all the punches that they can. So he understood how hard it can hit. And then he attacked once he knew that that person was weak. And that's how he won the fight, right?
Yeah,
So now what ends up happening is we forget that life is throwing us punches, like you said,
yeah,
to teach us. And instead of sitting here saying, okay, cool, let me try to fight back, why not just receive what is being given to you?
yeah.
And I'm a firm believer in what you said. Nothing happens twice by accident.
Nope.
So if something's happening to you redundantly, it's because you're making the same decision in a different way.
And life is saying, "Yo, I'm trying to get you to go left, bro.
And you going right.
And
You
you
just
and
want
you
to go right."
Like
and
you
you're not listening.
Yeah,
But how do you take that, right? How do you take that and explain to someone who basically who's destroying their future?
yeah,
Like you looking at the person, you like, you know, Rico and I had a conversation, and we have conversations all the time. Now it's different.
yeah,
Like we have great conversations, but before, let's say a few years ago, I'm like, nah, you got that in about 5, 6 years.
yeah,
He should be like, nah, nigga, five. Oh, sorry. He be like, nah, my boy. He be like, nah, my boy. 5, 6 months.
yeah,
And then now when we have a conversation, he's like, nah, I got a 5 year plan. I got 7 year plan because it does
I was
take
reaching. I
time.
say 12 months now.
yeah,
But like 5 more years, I'm hanging this shit up.
But the thing that I'm saying is like, if we're talking about like a generation of young men, whether they have wealth whether they blue collar working and doing well, whether they have no money, all three are in a lost space,
Yeah.
like completely
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like you let these women talk to you any way they want. Like you're just doing everything, and we're our gen. Like I'm like, damn, bro, how is it gonna turn out for you in 15 years?
Well, you got to understand and I see it a lot with a lot of men who go through a lot with women. If you don't have a vision, if you don't have a vision, then everything is poured into your woman. And there's nothing wrong with loving your woman, but when everything is poured into your woman and you don't have a vision, when you lose her, you lose everything.
But
But at least when you have a vision, that vision is always there.
here's the question for you, Dr. Price. My question is it because I don't want to go take no hits? Because to be a man, basically, you gotta go out there and take some hits.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about some real hits
Yeah.
and painful ones.
Yeah, for sure.
Why not just stay in the comfort of safety under her bosom?
Yeah, because
Safety.
you're living a depleted life. It's a you're living a shadow version of yourself, and you know it. And guess what?
She
She
knows
know
it.
it too. That's why she on your ass. You see what I'm saying? She on you because she knows that you're not achieving what you're capable of.
What does she get out of it?
Nah, but
What does
some
she give it up?
women.
She's hoping. Her hope is that this is going to inspire you into a trance of focus, discipline, and going after whatever you want to go after.
Even if it doesn't include her.
No,
False.
never.
Yeah.
Never thinks, never. No woman thinks like that. It always includes her.
It's always for her, actually.
It's for her.
Yeah, so like no, like but that's the idea. And again, sometimes here's the thing, like sometimes it starts off very positive. It's like, baby, I believe that you should do this and she'll even support you, give you half of her tax return.
Mm-hmm.
And then it go from that to
Your
like
mixtape.
it's a mixtape. It switches up. So then men got to be honest with themselves.
Yeah. I think
Like,
that's difficult.
come on now, look at the whole process now. Now, if it started off like that in the beginning, okay, cool. But if it was a gradual process and she got to a point where she was so frustrated, now it's disrespect,
It's tough.
it's tough.